Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I want to welcome you to the Engaged Employee Podcast. Our mission is to emphasize the relationship between the employee and the workplace with the goal of enhancing engagement levels to create a more productive and satisfying work environment. While many organizations strive to create a more engaging atmosphere, they often miss the mark by forcing connection with big team building events like axe throwing or escape rooms. Those activities only leave employees with a short-lived sense of belonging. Organizations may also try smaller and more suffocating events like happy hours or group birthday celebrations that their employees feel obligated to attend. As a social connections and business culture coach, I found that to create a stable, engaged, and productive workforce, there needs to be a shift in focus from mandatory fun and manufactured connection towards building trust and authentic conversation. Join me and a guest as we dive into social wellness strategies for the individual employee, techniques for developing interpersonal relationships with coworkers, and even some approaches for leaders to enrich the overall organizational culture. The Engaged Employee Podcast starts now. Welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast. My name is Coach Lee Hopkins, and my guest today is Meridith Grundei. Meridith is a luminary in the world of public speaking and presentation coaching. Coming to you from NYC, hooray! Meridith has a unique blend of experience. She's an award-winning theater artist and a former improv teacher at the legendary comedy enterprise, Second City. Love Second City. I also took a class there. She's not just any coach. She's the hidden asset for conscious entrepreneurs, CEOs, and tech leaders who want to elevate their communication and storytelling. With a knack for simplifying complex content and bringing narrative to life, Meridith has transformed the communication skills of professionals at giants like Merrick, Amazon AWS, and Google. Whether it's a stage, a conference room, or in front of a camera, she's the go-to expert for building confidence and making an impact. Now, let's dive into the insights and stories of a coach who's changing the way we speak, present, and connect. Our conversation today will be focused on interpersonal relationships with coworkers and colleagues. Meridith, welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast.
Yay! Thank you. I like you're doing the jazz hands.
Yeah, we both did it because
we did.
That's how you celebrate.
Guilty.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk to you because of all the things that you talk about and improv and putting yourself out there. And I struggled so much with doing that. And I hope my listeners today will appreciate this too. So tell us about how did you get into this kind of coaching?
Well, I will have to say I got into this kind of coaching. It was through teaching improv, and it was through having the opportunity to go into corporate America and into businesses and teach improv to teams, to teach them how to build trust with each other, better communicate, be more adaptable, and so forth. And I would get tapped on the shoulder sometimes and be asked if I could help, the CEO who had an upcoming conference or convention that they needed to attend and speak for, if I could help them out with their presentation.
Nice.
And so, of course, I'm a yes and girl. So I said yes. Yes, and figured out that I loved it. And it was like I got to direct these little solo performances, if you will. And then I started to see that there was a real need for people to level up their speaking skills within organizations and how people show up, because people don't get that in school.
Absolutely, they don't. I went to college and took a public speaking class, and it was not impactful as it is to actually just kind of get out there. And I actually joined Toastmasters, and it helped me a bit. But there's still a piece that's missing. And I know there's something fundamental. For those of you who don't know what Toastmasters is, it's an international speaking club and speaking leadership club. Fantastic. Recommend to join it. But there's something that's different about working with you? There's something that's improv, there's a skills, something else that you teach that levels up the kind of communication that another person has. And that's probably why I went to take a class at Second City, because I needed something else.
Mhm.
So with that, you marry those two together and make this amazing skill set to teach to other people. Can you tell us how you help your clients with your skill set? What is it that you do? Give us a little insight.
Well, I do several things. So I'll break it down into 3 different parts. I work with people one-on-one. I work with people in a group coaching setting, and then I work in organizations. And sometimes that might look like I'm just working in with leadership, or I'm working with leadership, I'm working with teams and so forth. So when I work with my clients one-on-one, I'm looking for a few things. I'm looking at their content, how their content is being delivered. I'm looking at their visuals and how they're also showing up physically. And so if when I look at that full picture, I'm bringing in all of those things, all of that training that I've had to really help elevate them as speakers. Because what I have noticed over time is that most of my clients are really, really good with the content. They've got the logic, they're well educated, they're experts in their field, but how they deliver that content and the visuals that are supporting it often are not as good as the content itself. And so it's really about, how do you simplify the content? How do you simplify the visuals? And how do you show up as your best self and put your best self forward? And when those 3 things all come together beautifully, uh, you can be unstoppable. You're gonna attract a lot more customers, and you're gonna be able to sell those products and services much better.
Yeah, absolutely. People will not buy from you if they're afraid and if they're confused. And if you can't clearly state what it is that you are selling and how it's going to help them, then they're just going to stay away.
Yep.
And that's a shame, because you probably have a really great product. You probably have something that's really amazing for them. They just don't know it.
Yes.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
Sadly. Well, oftentimes I find is because people get so bogged down in the features. They get bogged down
Mm,
on all the details and the nuts and the bolts, and those are the things that your customers or those that audience, they don't care about that. They want to just know how you're going to solve their problem, how you're going to inspire them to action.
right.
So it's
So
important.
I have a question about, how we can apply this and kind of scale it down just a little bit to the
Yeah.
interpersonal relationships, because I've seen a lot of "Whose Line Is It Anyway?" And I imagine that that's not quite what you teach, or if it is, would love to know more about that. But perhaps I'm thinking that I'm shy at work and I don't
Mhm.
know how to talk to my coworkers. I think maybe they don't want to talk to me. I don't know how to start the conversation when they say something. How can I use your skills to make a relationship or to at least talk to my coworkers?
Well, the one thing that I love about improv is that it helps build that curiosity muscle. And some of the things that we pull from that is that extemporaneous speaking, the idea of and yes and to me is not about like yes anding everything you hear, because you might hear something that you don't agree with. To me, it's about the acknowledgement piece. It's saying, I hear you, I acknowledge what you just said, and then sharing your point of view. And when we can do that and we can show up as our full selves and be curious and be active listeners and acknowledge the other person, and maybe that might look like repeating back what you just heard them say and then adding your point of view. There's ways that we can enter in. Now, if you're someone that's shy, one thing I would say is you might have to do a little bit more prep before you go to that networking event, for example, or to that conference with your colleagues. And so that might look like, what's a great open ended question that I could come with to ask people to get the conversation started? And then from there, how can I continue to be curious? How can I continue to pull on the thread and ask questions based off of that person's answer? So it's really about maybe doing a little bit more homework before you do these events, coming with an open mind, giving them more the listener more of the attention by being an active listener, and then pulling on that thread a little bit with a good dose of curiosity. And I feel that improv helps with all of those things, helps build those muscles.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I like the idea of preparing, because quite
Mhm.
often we feel better when we know what we're going to say. Where we if we just have the right words, we feel at least we're equipped with something. And then we're a little closer to closing the gap between us and the other person if we know what it is that we're going to do to bridge that gap instead of just going by like, oh, I don't know what to say. I never know what they say at these events. I never know how they act. And the preparation is really key. And the active listening, I think, is really important too. I'd love to hear when people paraphrase things back to me because
Mhm.
I can tell that they're listening to me. Even if they have a different point of view or if they agree with me, I really just want you to know, I really want to know that you have heard me.
Yeah.
And so I believe that you teach this like some kind of lesson, maybe. Is
I do.
that what you do for a living? Oh my goodness. But I've
Well,
heard that you have a confident speaking program. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I do. So that's my group coaching program. That's one of the ways that I work with people. It's called Confidently Speaking. And we meet every Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can sign up and be a member. It's a 1 year membership. If you can't make it to one of our weekly meetings, then you can just watch our video playback, and it's all hosted on Mighty Networks. We meet and we do improv exercises, and we specifically are meeting so that we can develop our speaking skills using improv to help us do that. So every exercise we'll do a debrief. How is this applicable in a real world situation? And public speaking isn't just about getting up on stage. It could be being on camera. It could be in a conference room, or like what we were just talking about with the networking and being one-on-one with somebody, or being guest on a podcast. There's so many different ways that we use our voices, and we're being asked to use our voices more and more, especially as business owners and entrepreneurs. So it's a wonderful, wonderful group, very supportive group of humans. And I highly recommend people check it out.
Yes, I love it. Yes, and I love it.
Yes, and
I wonder if I could kind of get some free training here, and if we could
yeah.
get like a just an exercise, a sample of what kind of exercise that we could do. I'm gonna put myself on the spot because you didn't know this was coming, and I didn't know I was gonna ask you.
So I'm going to
Mm,
give, am I giving you an exercise, or am I just sharing an exercise?
you can give me an exercise, a small exercise, and I will be the guinea pig.
Why don't we just do a quick game of one word at a time story?
Okay.
You want to
Okay.
do that?
Sure.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a story with a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's gonna be short and sweet,
Okay.
one word at a time.
Oh my.
Okay?
Okay.
So any questions? Are you good?
I'm scared. Yes,
Okay,
let's
good.
go.
I always say if you're not comfortably uncomfortable, then we're not doing the work. We're not doing the work. And
Mm,
if you do feel scared, when I said improv and you started to get hot under the skin, you're like, oh no, I could never do that. Then you are my person. You need to be there.
right.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready? I'll start. Once,
Upon
a,
time
there,
was
a,
cat
named,
Jerry.
Jerry,
Jerry
Jerry,
was
super,
smart,
and
lazy,
period. One,
day
Jerry,
was
reading,
about
science,
and
decided
that
he
could
fly,
to
Jupiter.
period.
Should we say that's the end?
That's the end. That's the end. I'm like, wow, that was fun. That was fun. There was a few times where I was like, "Oh, where do I go?" And I totally felt like very comfortable. Like you, I felt like, "Oh, well, I don't know what I'm saying. What if I'm gonna say the wrong thing?" But there was no way to say the wrong thing. Felt very comfortable with that exercise.
Good, I'm so glad. And here's the question that I might, like ask if we're doing this as a large group. I might say, how many of you in the group tried to write the story before the story was written? Or how
Oh,
many were you anticipating? Yeah,
yeah, right here.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then what I might ask is, how many of you have ever been in a conversation like that?
Mm,
Right? Where
right.
you're anticipating what you think the person is going to say before they're done speaking. And so you interrupt them.
Oops. And you don't get the story.
No.
You
Or
don't get the
if you
story.
try to hold on too tight, if you try to drive the story, if you're like, "It's not a cat, it's a dog," right? Then
Mm-hmm.
what happens is we stop the story. We stop the flow.
Hmm. I see. Yes, a very wonderful exercise. I really enjoyed that. And if you want to work with Meredith, you do that now. Go do it now. Go do it now. And
Oh,
Meredith is
yes.
going to tell you how to do it. She's going
I'm
to
gonna
tell
tell
you.
you.
She's going to tell you how to do it. Where to go, Meredith? Where can they find you? Where can they see you? I know that you have a website. You're on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. Tell us those places.
I am like, if you want presentation tips, if you wanna sit there for 12 hours, and I've had someone tell me that they sat there for 2.5 hours and watched all of my TikTok tips, please go to TikTok. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. And then my, website is grundeicoaching.com, so please check out what I have to offer there, and, I look forward to meeting you. Let's set up a one-on-one.
Absolutely. So you heard her. You heard her what she said. Go to grundeicoaching.com. Find her on Instagram too, Meredith Grundei
Yes,
Coaching, at Meredith Grundei Coaching, TikTok at Grundei Coaching, and Meredith Grundei on LinkedIn. Of course, all the links will be in the show notes. You will see it all. So if you're interested, and of course you would, because yes, and right. All right.
yes, yes, and.
And who wouldn't be? Thank you so much, Meredith, for
Thank
joining us
you.
today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks,
Take
Lee.
care.
Bye.
Another insightful episode of the Engaged Employee Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the world of employee engagement, leadership, and workplace dynamics. The Engaged Employee Podcast is brought to you by the Patterns of Possibility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Before we wrap up, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible guests and, of course, our loyal listeners. Your support keeps us motivated to bring you valuable content each week. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking and want to learn more about how we can help you or your organization make more meaningful relationships, go to patternsofpossibility.com and book a friendly conversation with me. Or you can email me your questions at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Stay connected with us and engage with fellow listeners by following the Patterns of Possibility on LinkedIn. You can also catch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop. And if you prefer the audio version, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. Thank you for being a part of our journey to create workplaces where passion meets productivity. Until next time, I'm Coach Lee. Stay engaged, stay inspired.